Oak woodlands, being a privately owned resource, it's important that we really think carefully about what it is we want to accomplish with our woodlands. And a management plan or a management really involves a series of actions that you need to accomplish your objectives. And that's something that we'll talk about here in a little bit, but really thinking clearly about why it is you own the land, or if you're advising landowners, consulting with them to see what really it is they're interested in getting from their land. The resource manager really has an important role, and I admire all of you for your background and your interest in managing your oak woodlands. You need to know something about botany, ecology, planning, administration. You need to know a lot about business and economics, and you have to really have a good feel for what's out there. And I don't know, the gestalt of your woodlands, every property is a unique piece of ground, and understanding that is quite important. I love this next quote, which came up on one screen, it didn't come up on the other. Here we are. It's from Aldo Leopold, really one of the fathers of the modern conservation movement. Aldo Leopold was also a forester, and he was the first director of the Forest Products Lab. But this quote, "A conservationist who is humbly aware that with each stroke of the axe, he or she is making his or her signature on the land." And I think there's a lot of important things in there. First, humility is an important part of being a manager. We think we know a lot of things, but we have to recognize that if we try something, it may not work out the way we intended, and we need to acknowledge when things aren't working out the way we intended and go back and fix it the next time around. So humility is an important part of management. And the fact that, he uses a stroke of an axe or some kind of manipulation, but I think that's important, that when we do things, we're actually making a signature in the land that's going to last for many generations. So when we make a decision about which tree to plant, or which trees we're going to thin, or which species of grass we're going to seed, we're making some decisions that are really going to have an impact into the next generation. Lots of reasons for managing oak woodlands, and some of these we're going to elaborate on in future presentations. Forage production and livestock is certainly important. As I indicated, 2/3 of woodlands are managed for livestock production. Many of you may be livestock producers, or you lease your land to livestock producers. And we have Morgan Duran from the Solano County Extension, Cooperative Extension with the university, will be talking on that next week. Watershed and water values, even though most of our water accumulates as snowpack in California, a lot of it is stored on oak woodlands, and all of it flows through oak woodlands. So what we do as managers has a lot to do with water quality and water quantity. Certainly aesthetics are an important value for woodland management. Wood products, John Shelley from University's Forest Products Lab will talk on that next week. Wildlife is a very important resource from our woodlands, and Greg will talk about this here in just a bit. And we'll also have a presentation from Bill Tichy next week on some recreational opportunities with wildlife. Forest health, I saw there's a few pathologists online, but there's certainly that's a big issue that we need to think about in managing woodlands. Public risks, fire is certainly one that comes to mind, but tree failure, and I see some tree failure experts online as well, but certainly thinking about those kinds of things are important when we're managing woodlands. And property value is a big issue, why many people own. When putting a management plan together, there's a number of parts of the plan that you need to consider. First is the goals and objectives. Mike, this one's not advancing for some reason. Are they coming up? Okay, so I won't even pay attention. Sorry about that, just checking on the technical issues here. So the general parts of a management plan, goals and objectives, and we'll talk a little bit about that today because it really is something you can go back, those of you who are landowners, and think about. Next week, we'll have the presentations on the various kinds of alternatives that you can think about. Assessing your land, I'll say a little bit about that today, but what kind of tree cover do you have? Where are your good acorn producing areas? What are your water courses like? Where are your north slopes, your south slopes? Where do you have good regeneration? Where's there a shortage of regeneration? But a general assessment of your property. Coming up with some alternatives and thinking through those alternatives for your various parcels on your land, and then deciding on which of those alternatives you're actually going to choose. I talked in my quote from Aldo Leopold about humility, and this idea of monitoring and feedback is very important. Many of you that are landowners have had the land in your family for many generations, and you have a very good knowledge about what's worked in the past, what happens when you have wet years and dry years, and where the cattle find good forage, where your good acorn producing areas are, and those kinds of things are extremely important. So all of those are parts of a management plan. I just put this here, and we're going to elaborate on this quite a lot in our fourth session, but in California, we do have one of the most stringent licensing requirements for professional foresters, and we also have a certified range manager designation. It's part of the professional foresters licensing rule. And professional foresters play a very important role in managing lands. Anybody harvesting timber certainly has to prepare a timber harvest plan, and that has to be prepared by a registered professional forester. Anybody that calls themselves a forester or a range manager has to be certified and licensed by the state, and there's an educational requirement, a apprenticeship requirement, and very strict examination process that takes place. And we'll talk about that more in the fourth process. A little bit on management plans in California, and I'm going to wrap this up and turn it over to Greg in just a moment, is the forest practice rules have really gotten to the point of shifting away from individual projects to a longer-term management approach. And a lot of the things we're going to talk about here and shifting you towards developing management plans for parcels really have a longer-term approach. Things like sustained yield plans, non-industrial timber management plans are really more like long-term management plans than a single point in time. Last week, we'll have presenters from both CAL FIRE and the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they'll talk about some of the public cost share incentive programs that are available, and those do require stewardship plans or management plans for your parcel, and they'll talk a little bit about that. Some of the specialized zoning requires management plans, and many of the conservation easements that many individuals are entering into require some kind of long-term plan that's agreed to between the purchaser of some of the development rights and the individual landowners. So management plans are important for a lot of purposes in California. And so with that, I think we've exposed you to a little bit about what we intend to do with this webinar series and some